Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming to the Senate Bill 299 information webinar by Georgia Solar. We'll get started here in just a few minutes. We'll let some other folks trickle in, so please stand by, and thank you for coming. Okay, welcome to the, hello all. Well, welcome to the Senate Bill 299 informational webinar by Georgia Solar Energy Association. We're pleased to have you all here for kind of a little lunch and learn about this new exciting bill. We're going to get into the programming in just a second, but first we want to thank some of our sponsors. Then we're going to talk a little bit about how this bill fits in a broader framework. Then we're going to hear from Stephen O'Day, one of the authors of the bill, and then get into a panel discussion after that. So I think we can go ahead and take a look at our sponsors here, Montana. All right, so we have different levels of sponsorship. If any of you are interested in joining the Georgia Solar Energy Association and becoming a sponsor, you can go to the georgiasolar.org and check out our different levels of membership and what all the benefits of that is for you and your organization. Here is our gold level sponsors. And here we have our silver and bronze level sponsors. And if you are interested, you can also email us at admin@georgiasolar.org. All right, so we want to take just a real quick, broad view of where things are as it pertains to SB 299. And a good way to do that is to look at South Carolina and what has been going on over there recently. I'll just take a moment to introduce myself. I'm sorry, my name is Don Moreland. I am on the board of Georgia Solar and chair of the policy committee, and we're very pleased to be bringing this webinar to you. But going back and looking at South Carolina, some of you are probably familiar with a lot of the goings on in South Carolina. They had a really aggressive push for distributed generation solar a few years ago, and then they renewed that push in 2019 with the Energy Freedom Act. And you see the utility scale numbers in 2018 and the projected numbers for 2020. But I really want to focus on the distributed generation down here. So we're going to start with South Carolina. And if you could look in the lower right-hand corner, I want to point out real quick that in 2018, you see the numbers in megawatts of distributed generation resources in the different utilities in South Carolina. But look at the projection after the Energy Freedom Act went into effect. So in 2022, they're looking at those numbers jumping quite a bit. And as you can see, they double in a lot of these instances from where they were in 2018 to where they're projected to be in 2022. Now come look over at Georgia, and you can see here we're doing pretty well. Comparatively speaking, in 2018 compared to South Carolina, but look at the projection for 2022 for Georgia Power. We see a very incremental difference, upward trend, but it's going a lot slower. Same thing for Oglethorpe Power and TVA and Meags. You see very incremental changes here between 2018 and 2022. And I think this just goes a long way to illustrating what a solar-friendly policy can look like and what the impact it can have on the state and the amount of deployment for distributed generation. So that's why we're so excited about SB 299. We believe that it has a lot of the same provisions that the Energy Freedom Act has, but it also, it has a lot to do with utility scale as well in South Carolina. So, and some of you might also remember, Georgia a few years ago used to be the #2 electric vehicle market in the country, just behind California. And that's because Georgia had a state tax credit for electric vehicles. And so when you look at something like that and you look at what South Carolina has done, what this means is that clean energy, solar friendly policies work. And that's exactly what SB 299 is all about. So I will stop talking here. There's one other thing I do want to mention, though, before I pass it off, is that Georgia can become a clean energy leader. There's a lot of great things going on. There's essentially 3 different components that can help Georgia become a leader in the new clean energy economy. And those 3 things are more clean energy economic development, more clean energy deployment, and a really robust workforce development initiative. And as far as the first one, the clean energy economic development, we are seeing signs of that here in Georgia. We are very proud to have Q-Cells as a sponsor of this event. And Scott Moskowitz is a board member with Georgia Solar and on our policy committee as well. And I'm going to hand it off to him in just a second to talk a little bit about Q-Cells. But then there's also SK Batteries. They've been recently in the news. They did reach a settlement with LG. And so that plant is going to move, looks like it's going to move forward and create 2,600 jobs. The second component to how Georgia can become a leader in clean energy economy is more clean energy deployment. And that's, again, where SB 299 comes in. This bill would allow for a open marketplace for distributed generation and make Georgia much more competitive. And it's just another component of how we can get to being a leader in clean energy. And then the workforce development, I know there's a lot of great things going on in workforce development too, but whenever we can develop education and training resources to empower workers to thrive in this new clean energy economy, then that's just going to help lift all boats, as they say. So with that, I will hand it off to Scott with Q-Cells and let him introduce himself and welcome Q-Cells to the Georgia Solar Energy Association.
Well, thanks, Don. Thank you very much. I'm Scott Moskowitz. I direct public affairs for Q-Cells. I'm thrilled personally to be working with you all at Georgia Solar, and for today for Q-Cells to be a partner in support of the webinar. I'll just give a quick plug. We are, of course, one of the world's largest renewable energy companies. Our Dalton, Georgia module factory is the largest of its kind in the United States, and in fact, the entire Western Hemisphere, actually. It employs about 700 folks in Northwest Georgia. We really care about growing the solar industry in every way, but really our biggest markets are residential and commercial solar, where we're the #1 vendor across the United States in each. We started the utility sector too and have done some big projects in Georgia. But overall, we're really interested in growing and expanding rooftop and distributed solar as well. So we're really excited about Senate Bill 299. Looking forward to the good discussion today, and I'll pass it to Steve O'Day to kick that off now. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Scott, and welcome everyone. Good afternoon. You've heard a little bit about Senate Bill 299 so far. I'm going to give you a quick overview, and then the panel will continue to discuss the bill and answer some questions. But SB 299 is a bipartisan bill sponsored by Senator Jeff Mullis of Chickamauga and Senator Gloria Butler of Stone Mountain and others, a number of other sponsors. And it seeks to build on what began in 2015 with SB 57 or HB 57. And I'm sure most of you are aware of HB 57 and how it opened the marketplace for free market financing for on-site solar energy projects. And it has been successful in doing that over the last 5 to 6 years. Many projects have been built using that type of financing, where a solar energy procurement agreement is utilized for a solar company to provide power to an on-site customer and charge based on the amount of power that is provided. So what SB 299 seeks to do is to expand the free market approach that has been successful with HB 57. And the legislation would essentially do 3 things. So there are 2 principal laws affecting solar energy in Georgia. One is HB 57, but the other one is the 20-year-old Cogeneration Act and Distributed Generation Act. And what SB 299 would do would be to make SB 57 and the Cogen Act consistent in a number of ways: definitions, capacity limits, and the way that excess energy is fed back into the grid and is compensated. So SB 299 would update the Cogen Act and also make its terms consistent with those that are already in HB 57. The second thing it would do would be to expand HB 57 to benefit nonprofits such as churches, schools, governments who have been hard hit by the pandemic economy, to allow aggregate solar facilities of up to 3 megawatts to accept participation by those non-tax-paying entities for off-site solar projects. So they would be able to buy subscriptions in an off-site solar project in order to get the benefit of the renewable energy being generated. And this would open up the market to allow nonprofit customers who may not be able to, or either economically or physically be able to have an on-site project, to be able to participate in an off-site solar farm of up to 3 megawatts. And then the third thing that this legislation would do, SB 299, would be to provide access by Georgia consumers to their own electricity usage data in a form that would allow them and solar companies to make intelligent decisions on the use of electricity on their own properties. So that's a general overview. Happy to answer questions, and I know Jeanette will have some to ask us about some more details in the legislation and where it stands now. So Jeanette, I'll turn it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. That was perfect. All right. I am so excited to be here today talking about this really exciting legislation. I'm really excited also to introduce this really great set of panelists. I'll start by introducing myself. So I'm Jeanette Gare. I am the co-chair of Georgia Solar, along with Montana Bush, who I think is somewhere at the bottom of your screen, if you want to wave, Montana. And Georgia Solar, I think folks know, we educate and we bring people together around solar. We really represent the industry and solar enthusiasts, but we obviously can't do that work alone, especially when you're talking about a piece of legislation like SB 299. And so we're really excited to bring together some of the partners that we've been working with to talk about this legislation and really get down into the weeds. So I am excited to introduce, if you guys just want to wave. So what I'm going to do is introduce folks and then give them each a couple minutes to introduce themselves. And then I've got a couple questions that we're going to let everyone answer. And then I'm also looking for questions from the folks on the webinar. So if you have questions and want to start putting them in, we will get to as many as we can. But first, on our panel, we have Janelle Menifee, who is also a board member with Georgia Solar, but then the CEO, director of Solar Time USA. Brion Fitzpatrick, who is with the Georgia Solar Energy Industries Association, Katie Ottenweller with Vote Solar, and then Steve O'Day, who you guys just met with Smith, Gambrell, and Russell. So let's go in that order. We'll kind of maybe go back and forth in terms of order, but let's start in that order. If folks want to maybe just take a minute to introduce yourself, tell us your solar story. So Jonelle. You got to go off mute, Jonelle.
Oh, sorry about that. Still can't get used to these Zoom calls. But yes, to introduce myself, my name is Jonelle Menifee with Solar Time. Me and my partner, aka Mother, this is a family business. We've been working the solar industry since 2015, and just love what we do. And we just are excited about sharing educational information about solar with not only the urban area, but rural areas, especially relating to farmers.
All right, I think next on our list was Brion.
Yeah, hello, Brion Fitzpatrick here. I'm Director of Business Development at NextAmp, and I'm here today representing the Georgia Solar Energy Industries Association. And thanks very much for having me. I'm very excited about this bill, and great to see a lot of familiar faces on the webinar I see in the attendees list today. So thanks a lot.
Katie.
Hi, everyone, and thanks for being here. My name is Katie Childs Ottenweller. I'm the Southeast Director of Vote Solar, working on solar policy issues in Georgia and Florida, and very excited to be here too.
And then Steve, you've already introduced yourself, but you want to add anything?
Sure, yeah. I had the sustainability practice group at Smith, Gambrell, and Russell, which includes renewable energy. We work with companies across the country really on sustainability issues and renewable energy. I'm excited to be part of this group, to looking at everybody on the screen, to be able to try to influence, again, Georgia's policy on solar energy to, again, open up the marketplace and remove market barriers. And this is a great vehicle for doing that. So thank you for having me participate in this.
Great. Oh, and then I'll just, looking at the screen, I'll give a shout out to other Georgia Solar Board members, Seth Gunning and Thatcher, who's coming to you from a bunker. They always do a really great job of managing the chat and question boxes. So thank you guys for helping with that today. All right, so let's go. I'm hoping each of you can share a story about an entity, and it can be very specific. So this could be a business or a person or nonprofit, or it could be more general, that you hope to help with SB 299. So let's go in reverse. So we're going to start with Steve, then Katie, then Brion, then Jonelle.
I tell you, over the last few years, I have worked with a number of institutions, nonprofit institutions, that have either because of the condition of their roof, where their property sits, zoning that may be applicable to them, or just the fact that they have a number of different meters on their property, which makes it difficult for the HB 57 on-site solar to fit into the way they are constructed. This would allow many of those nonprofits that I have helped work through issues over the past 5 years to be just simply be able to participate in an off-site aggregated solar facility. And I'm excited for the prospect of that happening. I think it will help these nonprofits, the ones that I have worked directly with, in meeting budgets that have become very difficult to meet over the last year, and to be able to make decisions to manage their energy usage on their own properties, which I think we as Georgians ought to be able to do that. And that's what HB 57 was all about, and that's what SB 299 is all about, expanding the concepts and the philosophy of HB 57 to allow for this kind of offsite project participation.
Steve, I'm going to actually jump in. I feel like we just got a question that is relevant and might just be a good thing to get to right now. So Daniel Uribe asked, if a nonprofit pays for the subscription, how would they get accredited by the utility?
That is a very good question. What the bill provides is that the solar company operating the offsite facility would keep records of the amount of output, energy output from the facility that has been purchased by the nonprofit, and then provide that information to the utility, who is in whose territory the nonprofit is located. And the bill only allows nonprofits to participate in offsite solar projects that are within the same electric service territory. So it's in the same territory. They measure the amount of energy output. They provide that information to the utility, and the utility then credits it on the monthly invoice that is sent to the nonprofit.
Perfect. All right, now let's go to Katie.
Hard to pick just one group that I'm excited about the potential from this bill, but schools really come to mind for me. And, I think about what champions our teachers have been over the last year with COVID and teaching remotely, and the idea of kids returning to school, and just the importance that schools are in our community in terms of the future of our kids' education. But then also most of these schools serve as emergency shelters that keep us safe. We have really amazing utilities here in Georgia, and they put a lot of resources into grid security, but we know that there's no such thing as a hurricane-proof grid, and the power is going to go out, and we're seeing stronger and stronger storms. So making it easier for schools to access solar and then be able to add battery storage to that and keep the lights on for community members, who then will have a safe place to keep warm or access air conditioning, charge their cell phones, reach out to a loved one, store medication that needs to be refrigerated. All of those things, schools really are the ecosystem for communities in a lot of ways. And this bill will make it easier for them to go solar, which is really exciting. And on top of that, give them opportunities for saving. So for example, in Arkansas, they passed legislation that made it easier for schools to go solar. And one school district is now giving teachers $15,000 raises because of the savings they're seeing from solar. So such a cool story about being able to keep money in our community and put it back where we really want to see it go.
Awesome. All right, Brion.
Yeah, Katie, thanks very much for bringing up that story about Arkansas. It's super cool what they're doing over there, and they passed similar legislation for offsite systems. And similar to other folks, it's hard to kind of pin down one entity that I've worked with. I've been doing project development in Georgia since 2008. And I think at the end of the day, anyone, and I see a lot of familiar names here, as I mentioned before, but I think we all get questions either from our neighbors or from folks that we work with. How can I go solar? What do you think is best? Should I do it now? Should I wait? What are some of what are some of the different things that are coming around that I might want to wait for? And time again, we hit these folks that we have to hit these barriers where we're talking to schools or even homeowners. We have to overcome all the different barriers that come with on-site solar. Is your property right? Can your roof sustain a solar project? Do you have shade? Those are all kind of the physical barriers. And then of course, we get into all the economical barriers. Should they pay for the system up front, and so on and so forth. And then, turning over to nonprofits, worked with multiple schools, and you have to get very, very creative on how you finance these projects. So, essentially, being able to not only do an offsite project is great, but for nonprofits to finally be able to catch up with a lot of the other entities that have been able to take advantage of solar in Georgia is huge. After 2020 and the pandemic, you've got a lot of public entities and a lot of tax exempt entities that are struggling. Schools, for example, of course, not being able to bring students into attendance over the past year. They're going to benefit greatly from this type of legislation. So, and that's just one example. Churches as well. So, I think it's going to be an opportunity to kind of right the ship and bring some of those other entities up that have not had a chance to participate in solar. And I would like to take this opportunity to thank a number of folks. Vote Solar have come in. Of course, Katie has been great to work with. Thank you very much, Katie, in helping to pull this bill together. It's been excellent to work with them, and they do fantastic work all over the nation to build and create solar industry and a marketplace for everyone to take part in. And also SEIA, the National Solar Energy Industries Association, have come in and partnered to help this as well. So I applaud both those groups, and thank you to Steve O'Day for coming in and helping us draft this legislation. He's been the powerhouse that helped us get HB 57 across the line back when we were working on that all together some years ago, back in 2015. So this has come around because a number of folks and stakeholders have come together to be able to collaborate on this bill. And so I just wanted to mention those few folks. And that's not the full list, but there are quite a few others that have come together. So thank you.
I echo all that. That was great. Janelle,
Hey.
last but not least, give us a story about someone you hope to help with SB 299.
Well, truth be told, I want to help those who help others. Okay. And that puts into mind the low income community. You don't see that much solar trickle down to the low income community. And there are so many nonprofit organizations that house low income individuals, whether it's prisoners in transition, well, former prisoners in transition from prisons to the main society. And guess what? If they are housing men or women, their electricity bills will be high, as well as churches. I specifically know a church that is providing housing for low income people. So my goal is to help those to help others and help their electricity bill drop some. There you go.
Awesome. I noticed when Steve was talking that this bill has a great bipartisan list of sponsors. So we've got Republicans, we have Democrats. It's not often that you see Republicans and Democrats coming together around something. So I would love to hear from the sponsor, or not from our sponsors, from our panel, if you've got thoughts about why solar is such a great bipartisan issue. And we'll start, why don't we keep going with Steve, Katie, Brion, Janelle.
Okay, yeah.
And if you want, you don't have to answer every question, but so you feel free to pass. But
Thanks, Jeanette. You may or may not know this, but HB 57 passed with unanimous votes in the House and the Senate. There was not a single vote against HB 57 when it was passed by the legislature in 2015, and of course the governor signed it, so there was no negative vote there either. So that is evidence of how access to free markets for financing and for energy use is a very popular nonpartisan. I'd go beyond saying it's bipartisan. It is a nonpartisan issue. People are concerned about their energy usage. I love what Janelle said about helping people who help others, because that is really what this bill is designed to do in the aggregated solar facility section. It is designed to help people and institutions that help others, that teach others, that help others with their crises in their lives. And those institutions have been hard hit in the last year. So the idea is to get this provision for nonprofits to be able to participate that have not yet been able to participate in getting renewable energy and getting the savings that are provided and the certainty that is provided with renewable energy going forward. So I think that's why it is nonpartisan, and that a bill like this gets such bipartisan support.
Do any of our panelists have anything to add? That was well answered.
I will second that. 76% of Georgians want to see more solar. right now, solar only makes up 3.5% of our electricity mix, and the vast majority of that are large solar farms. So, you know, all you have to do is look around your community and say, we don't have very much rooftop solar, and it makes sense. It's a good common sense solution for energy independence, energy security. So, you know, I think there is something for everyone to love about these policies.
Brion, anything else? Janelle?
Yeah, I'll continue on that. I mean, you know, I think we've heard already that Georgia's in, you know, the top 10 in the nation for solar capacity. And, you know, that's in large part to, you know, the leadership from the Georgia General Assembly and of course the Georgia Public Service Commission, whom we applaud for that. There are still other barriers that are holding us back. You know, so, you know, really it's you know, limiting solar companies in Georgia the ability to be profitable. And also we need to open up that access for homeowners and nonprofits to really have the ability to, like I said before, catch up with the rest of the entities that have been able to take advantage of solar. So like somebody mentioned before, the rising tide will raise all ships mentality. And so, yeah, I think that, you know, the more that we can, you know, support those that support solar down at the legislature, down at the Public Service Commission, you know, that would greatly help everybody and raise all ships.
And the rising tide also will raise all those small little boats too.
Jeanette, can you repeat your question one more time? I got lost in everybody's answer.
In the metaphors. The question was, why is solar such a great bipartisan, nonpartisan issue?
Well, I mean, you know, it's a U.S. product first and foremost. I mean, everybody loves space, and solar is part of space age technology. And then next thing you know, all the international manufacturers has jumped on board, and we've lost the fact that this is a U.S. investment. It's a phenomenon, if you ask me. And for people not to love solar, I mean, it takes away the concept of centralized energy distribution to distribute it. Now you are able to own your own. I mean, if I'm a Republican, hey, I'd love to be self-reliant, self-sufficient. I don't want to rely upon other people to generate my own power. I could generate it right on site at a cost-effective measure. Hey, I get tax credits, all that good jazz from it. So I don't think this is a partisan issue. And there's a lot of issues that we're facing as a country that's not partisan. It's just common sense. And so solar is a common sense solution to our energy needs, baby. Yeah.
Great. All right. Now we're going to rearrange things. Let's start with Katie, and then we'll go Brion, Janelle, Steve. So the next question is getting into a little bit of like looking into the future. I think I'm going to combine two questions that I've seen. One is just give us sort of what's the timeline from here. So if someone can kind of explain when the bill was introduced and sort of 2-year session, and then what do we think? What are some of the obstacles? What are some of the obstacles that we see kind of ahead of us? That's what I'll say. Katie, do you want to start?
Sure. So I will leave it to Steve to talk about sort of the timing logistics question. But in terms of obstacles, I mean, one of the big ones is just a need for like deeper education of our policymakers about why this is important, like not just at a macro level for Georgia, but for their particular district. And I think it's a great opportunity for folks who are doing projects in these districts, serving customers, like helping people to go solar or dealing with barriers in going solar for folks who would like to have access to these technologies, like making sure that those stories are getting through to your legislators and that they're able to hear from their constituents about why this bill is so important. I mean, they know that this is important to the solar industry, but connecting the dots between consumers, even just the monthly netting provisions in here have the potential to save a homeowner $400 a year just by clarifying what the Cogen Act intended to do back in 2001 when it was passed. And that $400 a year can go a long way for a family who's struggling to make ends meet. And so making that real for folks, bringing out those stories that we all know because we're serving these customers, we're hearing these stories, and making sure that those are getting to the folks who are going to be making these decisions at the end of the day, I think is incredibly important. And just helping us to really elevate those messengers and make sure that they're getting to the folks who really need to hear it.
Janelle?
Katie, I would.
Or, I'm sorry, did I forget my own? Go ahead, Brion.
Yeah, I was going to save the trouble of segueing it. But yeah, Katie, I would absolutely agree. Education is probably the most important element right now, and educating the folks down to the General Assembly and our legislatures. There's a lot of misconceptions and solar myths out there, and that might hold us back. And so, the more that we can educate, folks as to the benefits that this is going to bring, from everything through from, data access through to the standby charges that solar companies are currently facing. I know there's a number of residential solar companies out there right now that are trying to sell systems in different areas of Georgia, and in some territories they're facing exuberant standby charges, and so it's holding back the market in those different areas, and those customers are being penalized for trying to go solar and look for the savings and do the right thing. So Katie, you hit it on the head there, and that's why the JASIA and the Georgia Solar Energy Association is so important, to be able to be a place where we can educate others about these barriers. And I look forward to creating more forums like this throughout the year, and as we lead up to the next session as to when this bill will be reintroduced.
Great. Janelle, anything to add?
I'm sorry, but can you repeat that question? It's such good answers. I'm lost in the answers now.
I think we're looking at what are the obstacles that we have to overcome to pass SB 299.
Again, education and empowering the constituents, who are interested in this type of opportunity, and they need to talk to their local congressman. State representative. Wrong, portion of the government. But yeah, this is a great opportunity to re-engage people in their civil responsibility to our governance. Some folks say, hey, we're just going to let the government run itself. Well, if you let the government run itself, it's going to run itself into the ground. If you're a taxpayer and you are paying for the system, you are a consumer of whatever policies that are generated. Some policies work for you, some policies don't, but this particular policy will definitely work for the solar industry, consumers of solar, and the cost savings related to solar. So please, if you're an interested person to this policy, engage, just call them up. I mean, don't be afraid of them, they're regular people. And say, hey, I'm interested in this SB 299 thing. Are you in support of it? And they have to explain to you their position. And if they are, great. If they aren't, let them, this is your job as a constituent to tell your representative what you want and how it's going to benefit you. Because guess what, people? They work for you.
Steve, I think we left it to you to answer some of the timeline questions. So do you want to add anything on obstacles, but then also make sure you get in some more about what's our timeline here?
Sure, I'll do that. And one thing I wanted to emphasize, it's important to understand that what this bill does is it removes barriers. This is not a bill that is providing subsidies. It is not a bill that is taking from taxpayers and trying to help the solar industry. It is a bill that removes barriers to a free market. And that's another reason why it gets these kinds of legislation get bipartisan support, because the barriers to a free market are things that that prevent a market from working at its optimal level. And that's what we have in Georgia, particularly in the distributed generation area. So this is focused on removing the most obvious barriers. But as far as passage, this bill was introduced late in the session. So every General Assembly has a 2-year session. We just finished the first year of the session. This bill was introduced after crossover day, which is the last day that a bill can be passed by one body in order to be considered for final passage that year. So it was not eligible for passage this year. We had hoped to have a hearing on it late in the session. As very often happens in the General Assembly, late in the session, everything was coming to a head on a number of other pieces of legislation that were eligible for final passage. So we were not able to get the hearing in, but now we are hoping and planning to have a hearing in the fall by the Senate Regulated Industries Committee, to which this bill has been assigned. So that pay attention to that, because there may be a hearing and an opportunity to provide some of that education to the legislators that everyone has been talking about. And then it is our hope and plan to have final passage of this bill in the 2022 session of the General Assembly.
Great. All right, we've got two kind of, I'll call them wonky questions, but getting into kind of the weeds on things. So I don't think we have to have every single panelist answer these, but I'll just throw them out there. So the first is, will Meags be required to adhere to 299?
They should.
Well, so the answer to that is they are already subject to the Cogen Act. And so the modification, and they're subject to HB 57. So they are already subject to both pieces of legislation. And so the modifications to those two pieces of legislation that are contained in SB 299 will apply equally to municipal electric entities, as well as EMCs, as well as investor-owned utilities like Georgia Power. So they will apply to all utilities in the state.
I would
Great.
like to also highlight a little thing, because some people may not understand what a MEAG is. So who is a MEAG, and are you under a MEAG's authority, electrical authority? Well, guess what? If you pay your electric bill to your city, then you are under a MEAG. And you can go into your MEAG and say, hey, what's our solar policy? And, they share with you their solar policies are. And if you may not like them, then I hope that you engage the policy committee with the Georgia Solar Energy Association, which is a committee that both me and Jeanette are on. And, just share your experiences, and we can help you communicate to them. But guess what? They're your mayors, they're your council people, and they should adhere to the type of solar policies that will help you benefit and get the type of rate of return that you're looking for as a consumer of solar energy.
Thank you so much for that, Janelle. And I'll just also second that, we are hearing loud and clear from Georgia consumers that this is a major problem. So just to give a picture of how intense some of these standby charges are, you could pay $15,000 for a solar panel out just upfront. And depending on who your utility is, there are utilities in Georgia that are charging $50,000 in fees over the life of the system. $50,000. I mean, that's just wrong. It's just wrong. And, I think this, the aim of the language in the bill is to provide very common sense guidance for utilities that want to try to implement these fees. It has to be based on the actual cost of providing electric service to these customers. They can't single out solar customers. They have to treat them the same as similarly situated customers. And so, we think these are incredibly important to making sure that Georgia consumers are not being penalized for going solar just because they happen to live in one of these electric service territories.
Amen.
Hey, Jeanette, I have one other, just the golden nuance there. So I think everybody on this call knows that Georgia Solar and Jafia and Vote Solar have been very active over the last several years at the Public Service Commission on a number of these issues, right? Trying to make incremental progress, and we've gained a lot of ground, like we did last year with monthly netting, which Brion and Katie and others were responsible for helping to get that win. But it's not as commonly known that the Public Service Commission actually only regulates Georgia Power as it pertains to energy rates and other restrictions. So by now moving from the Public Service Commission to the Georgia General Assembly, these wins, as Steve indicated, would cut across every entity that has to abide by that legislation. So we would be able to hopefully get light monthly netting or retail net metering that would apply to Georgia Power, to a Meag, and to the electric cooperatives all in one fell swoop. So rather than sort of picking these fights one-on-one, although we're willing to do that, and as Janelle said, if you have an individual situation that you would like some support and advocacy for, please reach out to us and let us know about it. We're happy to get engaged. But by moving this conversation to the General Assembly, we hope to take a much broader brush approach to this and gain wins that would apply in every corner of the state with every utility for every class of customer.
Thanks, Thatcher. All right, I've got some more of these kind of in the weeds questions. Maybe Brion, I don't think we've made you start yet. This is from Anonymous. Will this bill help solve the problem that multifamily housing buildings face, particularly around SEPAs? It's nearly impossible to make multi-metered facilities work out with SEPAs. Can we crack that nut?
That nut has been cracked in other states, and for multifamily buildings with multiple meters. So the intent here is a couple things. So we are trying to clarify the Cogen Act where there's a number of inconsistencies, first of all. And as it relates to multifamily properties and that have multiple meters. And so we're not quite there yet. That is a big bite out of the apple that we are unable to take at this time. And so the intent here is to bring more economic benefit to nonprofits currently through this bill, and also with in regards to clarifying some of the wording in the Cogen Act and amending the Cogen Act, we are able to change the capacity limits that residential customers face. But I hope that answers the question. But I don't think we're quite there yet. But I do think it's on the agenda in the future. And let me just say that across the U.S. we see many states that are way ahead in time on their solar policies. California, of course, leading the way. New Jersey was maybe second in place for many years. Often we would think about California being 10 years out. Now we're seeing states like Arkansas getting out ahead, South Carolina, Tennessee, and all around the Southeast. So, we are essentially playing catch up through different methods of changing policy. So, as Steve said, we are, amending two different bills here, and we're trying to create some clarity. We're trying to clean up some inconsistencies. So this is what is within arm's reach right now. But what the future may hold, who knows?
I'll also just say, I think generally that's absolutely true. I think if they are a nonprofit affordable housing, offering multi-family housing through a nonprofit entity, my understanding is they would be eligible for the aggregate offsite options in the bill.
Yeah, that's right. And I apologize. Yeah, if they are a tax exempt entity, yes, they would be they would be eligible for that. And so they do have the ability to be able to subscribe to one of the offsite solar farms, which are right now we're looking at a 3 megawatt solar system that would be placed within their service territory. And so they would be able to go out into the open market and contract with a solar developer or subscriber service that would be able to offer those subscriptions. And so they would be able to sign up their meter to receive credits for that system. And I think part of that question was also in regards to aggregate metering. If there are tax exempt entities that have multiple meters, take a school, for example, they want to aggregate their meters together to understand their entire need, then they would be able to pull that together and provide credit to their overall bill across their multiple meters.
Others? All right, I think we've got sort of 2 questions left. This next one is a little bit of it's kind of, I think, hodgepodging together several questions that Seth and Thatcher, Montana, and Don have been doing a really good job of answering. Thank you guys. But I think what we'd like to do is I'm going to maybe start with Steve and just ask you to kind of dig in on some of the other provisions that we haven't spent as much time talking about in some of kind of this Q&A section. So specifically the monthly netting to all utilities, elimination of fees, raising the caps on system size. And there were some, I saw specific questions around kind of that cap. Can you have multiple, for example, can one entity have multiple if you have, under that cap? So maybe dig in a little bit more on those sort of 3 things: monthly netting, elimination of fees, and the caps.
Sure. On the monthly netting, the proposed legislation, SB 299, emphasizes the original requirement of the Cogen Act for monthly netting, that on a monthly basis, the energy used and the energy produced by an on-site solar system be netted out. We understand that not all electric providers are doing that, but it was clear in the original legislation. The amendment makes it even clearer, uses the term monthly several times just to make it very clear that this has to be done. As far as the capacity, a nonprofit entity can participate in as many offsite aggregated solar facilities as it wants to, but it cannot exceed the capacity limit, which is already in HB 57, and which we are making the capacity limit definition of the Cogen Act equivalent to, and that is 125% of the peak annual demand of the entity. So they can participate in more than one, but when you add them up, it can't be more than 125% of the peak annual demand. That change in the Cogen Act is significant because the current capacity limit for the Cogen Act for a commercial facility is 100 kilowatts. And this legislation would make the definition the same in the Cogen Act as it is in HB 57, the 125% of peak annual demand. It would also raise the capacity limit for a residential installation to 20 kW from the existing 10 kW. It would do that in both of the pieces of both of the existing laws. And there was a third aspect. I've already forgotten it, didn't it? What was the third one?
The fees.
Yes. So I think Katie addressed this earlier, and that is that the Cogen Act already has provisions relating to fees that can be charged, but it again clarifies those provisions to require that any fees, and we're talking about standby charges or other fees. Now, this is not rates. This is not the rates of EMC or of a municipal electric authority. It is any extra fees that they are charging for solar customers have to be based on the actual cost as supported by actual data of providing, serving that customer. And it cannot treat solar customers, there's an anti-discrimination provision, cannot treat solar customers any differently than non-solar customers. And so it makes that very clear on the fees that can and can't be charged.
Excellent. Okay. Last question. Janelle, I saw you getting comfortable. Get ready. We're starting with you. How can Georgia Solar members help? So where can we start?
Well, I mean, first and foremost, read the bill, okay? It's not that difficult. Put on your reading glasses if you ain't got glasses like me already, okay? Read the bill. And then find out who is your elected representative that's on the state, House and Senate. Also reach out to the governor, talk to these people. They're not scary, and have that conversation. And once you start being a real citizen, because your citizen responsibility doesn't stop at voting. That's just the start. The next step is for you to engage folks and just let them know where you're at. I mean, you could be your own lobbyist. I mean, there's some folks that are paid to be lobbyists, but then you can just go up to the Capitol, call them, reach out to them, say, hey, I want you to support this bill. Why do you want to support it? Support it because, the reasons they just stated, okay? And you'll be surprised. And it's not just us talking to them. It's the people that vote for them that need to talk to them. So please do your job.
All right. Quick. Brion, what should Georgia Solar members do? Read the bill.
Read the bill. Join Georgia Solar at some level, and reach out to your decision makers and the folks that will listen to you within your area of the state. And like Janelle said, let them know that you support this. This is going to be a long endeavor until we get to the next session. It's going to be educating. It's going to be also, sharing that information with your friends and neighbors. I mean, it's very important. There's a number of things happening here. I mean, we've got 5 cities plus that are trying to go 100% clean energy. This bill is going to help them. We've got multiple schools that have had this on their radar for a long time, that are figuring out ways that they can go solar and lower their carbon footprint. This is going to help them as well. This is a massive conversation that different types of entities are going to start having between themselves. And it's important that the messaging and that the data and the facts about this bill and what it's going to do are clear, and those answers you can always get from different groups around the state. I talked about the title "Raise All Ships" earlier. This is not just the Georgia Solar Energy Association. This bill was brought around by the Georgia Solar Industries Association. I wanted to create that distinction for a moment. It's like a sister organization. We are the C6 to the C3, which the Georgia Solar Energy Association is, of course. And so we are focused solely on policy and trying to create forward policy for everybody. There are a number of other groups, like I mentioned before, of course, Vote Solar, the National CO organization, and a number of nonprofits that are around Georgia that are also in support of this, whether they are representing faith-based organizations, representing schools, representing homeowners, and so it's really going to be about bringing everybody together and making sure we're on the same page as we move this bill forward. There can be no fragmenting of the industry, and so that's an important element that we need to push.
All right, we're at time. So Katie, Steve, I'll offer you really quick. Do you have, 1 or 2 sentences, final words?
Tell us your stories. If you have great, compelling stories, please share them with us. We want to get those stories out there. Thank you.
Great.
Yeah, and I was going to say, participate with Georgia Solar Energy Association. Mm-hmm. Bring your issues to the organization. That's how we have drafted this legislation, to address issues that were brought to the organization and as problems that create barriers at the marketplace. So keep communicating with the association.
All right, awesome. Okay, I have a couple quick announcements. We'll keep you for maybe 1 more minute. Yes, we will be continuing to work with you to engage on this issue. We're looking for volunteers specifically to join something we have called the Behind the Meter Working Group. If you're interested, send an email to admin@georgiagasolar.org. And then look for updates from us on future events around this issue. Other thing that someone brought up, I think, Brion, that was you. Thank you. We need your support. We are run on funds that are donated very generously from the industry and our members. So Montana, I saw you put that link in there, put it in there again. The only way that we are going to be successful is if we have the support of people like you. So please take a minute to open that link before we shut things down. And then just a couple updates. Our next event is our Excellent Women in Solar Energy event. I think this is our 6th annual event where we really lift up women and diversity in the solar industry. And then so that's sometime in June, date to be determined. So make sure you're on the Georgia Solar mailing list and we will send you that information. We do know the dates of our first, hopefully, fingers crossed, in-person event. We're going to be hosting a happy hour after the Georgia Energy Conference on August 11th on Jekyll Island. So we really hope that all of you can come join us to toast to solar on Jekyll Island. So that date for that is August 11th. And I would imagine if you just Google Georgia Energy Conference, or maybe Thatcher can find the link. I see him looking for it right now. We'll try and share the link, but we'll certainly send an email out about that as well. So that's all the, I think that's all. Oh, the last thing I saw was like, do we have a one-pager on that? James really wants to say something. We do have a one-pager. We'll be sharing that for this as kind of a wrap up for this event, and look forward to continuing to share resources. Mr. Marlowe, did you want to bring it home?
I just want to say thank you. This is some fantastic work. I mean, Stephen O'Day is one of the top legal environmental minds in the country. We've got Katie, all the panelists, I won't give them all by name, but Steve Butler, Fatima, Scott, Natcher, just thank you. I mean, it's so important that we engage and communicate clearly in a nonpartisan fashion at the legislature, at the PSC, other leadership forums. So just thank you, thank you, thank you.
Mr. Marlowe stealing my closing thunder, but I totally agree. Brion, Janelle, Steve, Katie, thank you guys so much for being partners in this work, for taking your lunch hour today to talk about this really important issue. We really appreciate you guys and are excited to work with you over the coming year. Thanks everyone for joining us. Bye.
Thank you all.
Have a good one.
Bye.
Good one.